Good morning, everybody. And that intro, which was from the Two Guys Drinking Coffee podcast,
Woohoo!
and we will change that to show the Patriot Pulse podcast on there as well. But that was courtesy. The music was courtesy of the United States Air Force Band. That they're always. I always love listening to the military bands. They are very
Yeah,
professional.
they do a
Well,
good job.
anyways, we and I see Twyla's in the green room here. We'll bring her on to the side. We had a little technical difficulty at first. We couldn't hear Twyla when she came on to test it. But let me just give you a little intro, then we'll go and we'll see how we're working. First of all, welcome. This is episode 16 if you're following the Patriot Pulse podcast. And it's episode 220 if you're still following the Two Guys Drinking Coffee podcast. But we have a special guest with us today, and that special guest is Twyla Braze. And I was told how to pronounce that because it rhymed with praise. So if you're wondering how, it's Twyla Braze. And she is the president and co-founder of Citizens Council for Health Freedom. We over the years we have been very fortunate to have. Over the last 4+ years, we've been doing this podcast. We have been blessed by having guests of national, international influence and acclaim. And today is one of those special occasions where we have a woman who co-founded an organization that promotes the mission of health freedom by promoting useful resources, policy research, and unique initiatives. CCHF monitors Congress and state legislatures and testifies on proposed legislation. On their own website, their mission statement begins with CCHF exists to protect patient and doctor freedoms, something we nearly completely lost during the last 4 years during the scamdemic. Today, Twyla is here to talk about a very important subject, also dealing with freedom. Freedom is being taken away from us, and that is the Real ID. The CCHF website is filled with information on this subject, but let's start by welcoming Twyla onto the podcast. Good morning, Twyla. You're still muted, dear. I don't know how. Let me see on here. No, I muted and I unmuted it on my end. Oh my goodness. Edit mic settings. I don't think there's a way for me to edit anything from my end. No. Oh. No, I'm not hearing it at all, Twyla. I'm sorry. I wish there was something I could do from my end to help that out, but I don't think there is. Because I can mute a mic from my end, but it's unmuted. I didn't know if you tried to reboot before you got back. Yeah, that's what I figured you were doing, which is why you went off the screen. Are you using a external microphone or a built-in microphone, like into a laptop or a webcam? Yeah, I'm asking the question and I can't hear the answer.
She said built in.
Oh, built in. All right.
Yeah. I read her
a lot of times, if you look down at the microphone setting at the bottom corner in the sys tray, and then click on the selection for the microphone, it'll show you. It might be just selecting the wrong microphone. She dropped off.
Because if you have two microphones going, like if I leave my headset camera or microphone on, it won't play. So I have to turn my microphone off on my headset.
Okay.
Yeah. There you go.
Yay!
I had to use Firefox. Chrome was not working. So
all right. That makes sense. Okay. So
there you go.
Sometimes that message. Well, now that we got you on there, we can hear you. Good morning, Twyla. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Good morning.
It's really special to have you on here. In the last couple weeks, preparing for this episode, for this show, I did a lot of research on the CCHF website and listen to some of the podcasts that you've been on. So I can't wait for you to share what's going on, especially with the Real ID. That is one of those situations where people just take for granted, oh, the government is monitoring you anyway, and I want to fly on a plane, so I'm just going to suck it up and go get it. What's your take on that? Why are people so willing to give up their freedom?
Well, first of all, they just don't know they're giving up their freedom. Really, for most people, they think that this is simply a state driver's license with a star. And they know that the federal government has mandated it, but they look at it and they're like, well, it's just a driver's license and it just has a star, and they don't know what the other plans are for this. And one college student told me that he chose to have a Real ID because they said you could have a regular ID or a Real ID. And he said, well, who wouldn't want a Real ID, right?
Yeah.
So,
I want the special one.
Yeah. I think what people need to understand is it's a federal ID. It's a national ID. So it is a federal takeover of the sovereignty of the state. It's a federal takeover of driving and identification. And the federal government is allowing the states to have driving privileges on the car, but the federal government is now in charge of Real ID. Is now in charge of the card. It's in control of the card. Right. And when you know what the law says and you know what the DMVs are planning to do, you realize that this is much bigger, because the DMVs, they have an organization called the AMVA, the American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. So this is like, the heads of all the DMVs around the country, the driver vehicle motor services. And anyway, so they testified to Congress on December 5th, 2023, of their plans to digitize the Real ID, put it on our phones, and have remote real-time access to it. So that usually gets people to go, oh, wait a minute. So that every time you pull it out, you're going to ping the government and pull it out and use it. And then, people don't understand about the biometrics part of it. So the Real ID rule says there has to be a biometric photograph. So it's not just a regular photograph. It's biometric, so it captures certain points of your face in a way that they need it captured so that they can put it into their systems and then, look down at a crowd and pick you out of a crowd. And so it's going to be a biometric controlled digital federal ID for their purposes. And it's essentially an internal passport. And, the law allows it to be for way more than flight, because it allows the Secretary of Homeland Security to expand the required uses, or essentially restricted access. Because right now you have restricted access to planes according to the Real ID, but they could add that it's required for healthcare. So you could have restricted access to healthcare if you don't have a Real ID. They could say you need it for buying a gun, or opening a bank account, or renting a hotel. The law says it's for any other purposes that the secretary shall determine. And those are the words right out of the law.
That's scary. As a matter of fact, if you look, I think at every single bill I've always read, at the very end of the description of the bill, and it always ends up, and for any other purposes. And that's how they get in these ridiculous amendments that have nothing to do with the intention of the original bill. And that's exactly what they did with this as well, which I'm surprised. Let me ask you this. I want your take on this. All right, this bill has been passed many years ago, and it's been kicked down the road by every president. I think it started under Obama or
Bush.
Bush. Okay. After part of the Patriot Act or right after it?
After it.
Okay. So it's been under Bush, it's been under Obama, Trump, and then Biden wasn't real president, but and now it's back under Trump. Why? What disturbs me is why did the Trump administration decide that now was the time to start trying to enforce it? And that's another issue altogether. They're trying. What's your? I mean, Trump. I mean, of all people, I would not expect to do that.
I think what we're looking at is really Homeland Security. And so whether it's Trump or Biden or whomever, Homeland Security has a plan here. And Homeland Security is in charge of the Real ID. And so let me just give your folks just a little bit of a history here, which shows you sort of why we're at where we're at. In 2005, this thing passed. And it passed on the floor of the Senate with senators complaining, both Republican and Democrat senators complaining that this Real ID Act had been stuffed into the middle of a must-have defense spending bill. And so Republican Lamar Alexander called it a national identification card and said, we really need to have a public debate over this. Democrat Patty Murray said it's never had a hearing. We've never even had it in a conference committee. And here it is in the middle of this bill. It's got privacy concerns, but they passed it anyway. But then as soon as the first Homeland Security rule came out in 2008, this is when states became aware of what the federal government, Congress had done. And they stood up and basically they said no. There are about 30 states that did one of two things. They either passed a law prohibiting any compliance with the Real ID Act, the federal Real ID Act, or they passed a resolution opposing it. And so there it sat for about 10 years until President Obama in late 2015 announced from the rooftops that if you don't get a Real ID by 2016, you won't be able to fly. Now, 2016 was probably the third deadline that the government had tried to impose, but this time Obama caught the media's attention. And so the media heralded this from, Washington to Florida, and people got concerned that they wouldn't be able to fly. They started contacting their state legislators and saying, fix this. Now, what state legislators should have done is said, I'm not going to fix this because fixing it takes away state sovereignty, 10th Amendment rights, and fixing it takes away individual sovereignty, particularly your privacy rights and your ability, your First Amendment rights about, the right to gather and travel and all this kind of stuff, right? Movement. But that's not what they did. They just started to fall one by one. And by 2018, all states had complied, either by law or just the DMV, moving the entire system to Real ID. But then COVID struck, right? So there was another deadline, right? And a certain number of people went into it and a bunch didn't. And so then they took another deadline and then COVID struck and then they added another deadline. Well, in October of last year, under the Biden administration, they put out a rule, which we opposed, and we got tens of thousands of public comments opposing it as well, to start progressive enforcement on May 7th, 2025.
Right.
So the entire rule, which is about 65 pages, I've read the entire thing, is really all about not having a big problem at the airport. So if they had put the hammer down on May 7th, they thought that there would be backlash against public officials. They said there will be operational disruptions. They said there would be long lines of delay and people would miss their flights. And so they did a 2-year phase-in progressive enforcement. Now, you have not heard Kristi Noem, Secretary of Homeland Security, talk about this 2-year progressive enforcement. Instead, what you hear her talking about, like on April 11th, after the rule was finalized in January, it didn't matter. They discounted all our unconstitutional concerns. They just dismissed them altogether. and they imposed it starting May 7th. But then, April 11th, Kristi Noem, for all the nation to hear, does a video as Homeland Security, Secretary of Homeland Security under Trump, and says, if you arrive at the airport without a real ID, you won't be able to travel. No, this was just a lie, because for one, she's under the 2-year progressive enforcement.
Right.
And then for another thing is there are 16 other IDs. And she didn't mention those, like passport
Yes.
card, right? It was the DMVs that were having hundreds of thousands of people coming that were telling people, no, use your passport, use your passport. There's no way we can get a real ID for you. But
Right.
it wasn't coming out of Homeland Security. And then on May 6th, the day before the supposed deadline, she is testifying before Congress, and somebody asked her about, will people be stopped from flying? And she said, no. There'll just be a few more security steps if they don't have real ID, but we will make sure they meet their travel itinerary. And then the very next day, May 7th, the deadline, she comes out with an Instagram, and in all caps, it says, today, if you arrive at the airport without a real ID, you will not be able to fly.
I'm wondering.
Your question about Trump, this is about Homeland Security, and they're planning to get us all into one system. But the left will use this system as a social credit system.
Yep.
But yet Trump has authority over Homeland Security.
He does.
So, I mean, he directs his different departments that are under the executive branch in a number of different ways. I mean, he obviously would have the ability to tell her to stand down a little bit. I'm surprised that Congress, especially since they had a problem with it to start. Why do you think there's nobody's addressing it? Nobody that I've heard in the public. I'm talking about anybody in the Senate, anybody in the Congress saying we need to repeal it. We've had groups. I don't know if CCHF has been one of the groups, but I think JBS, John Birch Society, is one that has been putting out a thing of repeal the real ID or put some legislation in there to take that away. Because the whole idea of it's to combat terrorism is ridiculous. I mean, it's to put everybody, like you say, under national surveillance. And I guess that begs the question, how far of a stretch, and I'll ask you this, and Fred, you can chime in too. How much of a stretch is it if this really gets implemented to the next thing, show your papers? If we live right on the border of New York State in Pennsylvania, right. Show your papers if you want to go over the border. Mm-hmm. Show your papers if you want to travel to Ohio. Show your, where did I hear that before? Mm-hmm. Russia, communist Russia.
Yep.
In the Germany under the communist regime, you have to show your papers, and that to me is where this is headed.
So, is it still in the probationary period right now?
No, I mean, what the rule says is that 56% of all cards are now Real ID compliant, and 44% of all cards are not. And so our organization, which is leading the charge on this issue, we fought it to the mat in Minnesota for 2 years straight back in 2016, 2017. So we've looked at so many of these Real ID documents and that sort of thing. But so it's 44% that are not compliant, and we are encouraging people to turn in the Real IDs that they have. And now we're getting stories. So the Homeland Security says that there are only 5 states that mandate Real ID, and maybe you will or will not be surprised that they're all Republican. So Georgia, Florida, Texas, Wyoming, and Mississippi. So they don't even give you an option. But what we are finding in law, we're finding several things now, because we're looking at all the state laws having to do with Real ID, and we're getting stories from people who are making the switch. Now, for your listeners, I should point them to refuserealid.org. Refuserealid.org, and I will talk about this one document where we tell people how to turn back in their Real ID. We call it "Lose Your Real ID," make a switch. And so we're hearing their stories, and so some states. Thank you for putting that up. Some states are saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, but once you've got a Real ID, you can't switch back." Now we're looking to see if that's what the state law says, or if we've got rogue DMVs on our hands. And by rogue DMVs, I mean the fact that we discovered that during that time between when all those states said no and when President Obama, claimed that you wouldn't be able to fly in 2016. It turns out there was a little Real ID office at Homeland Security that had 5 employees. And they decided when all the states said no, they would just work with the DMVs directly. So these DMVs were moving their states toward Real ID surreptitiously and taking federal money, even though it was behind the backs of their governors, behind the backs of their legislatures, and illegal, because the state law said you cannot progress this state anywhere, take any money to move Real ID forward, but they were doing it anyway. And there's an article published in May 2020 which revealed this fact, and it has 5 anonymous sources, and it's a real established publication, but they had to have them anonymized because there was so much, going on back there that nobody wanted to talk publicly. So anyway, but we're not surprised because we found that money coming into Minnesota, and we knew that we still had a law against it. And we thought, well, how are they getting money from Homeland Security if we have a law against it? So we know that this is true. Anyway, so the stories that we're getting from people who are making the switch, some of them are like, people in California who are saying easy peasy, just went in, got a switch. Minnesota, really easy they get some looks, they get some questions, but it happens. But in Indiana, they said, nope, we're not going to give you a Real ID. I mean, we're not going to give you a regular ID if you have a Real ID. And the regular IDs are now just for illegals, or they're just for green card, or
That's crazy.
We heard from somebody in Connecticut who had to go through his legislators, and I think somebody else. And it looks like he's finally going to get a standard driver's license. But the important thing here is the Real ID is a federal ID under federal control. This is a states' rights issue, and you need your state driver's license, which they are not planning to digitize and make into an internal passport. So everybody has to do their part to try to make the switch back and increase those non-compliance numbers. So it's at 44%, so let's make it 45 and 46 and 47. And every month, the DMVs report to Homeland Security how many Real IDs there are versus standard driver's licenses. So we are concerned that the DMVs will do everything possible to make sure you cannot get a standard driver's license. So now is the time to make the switch. Do it as soon as possible. Do not wait for renewal. Just pay the extra $10, $20, $50, whatever it is. Make the switch now. And so anyway, it's really important. As an organization, we have a 3-pronged approach.
Okay.
So we're asking people to act because that's the most powerful thing that there is. But the other thing is we're getting legislators to act. So legislators in 10 states are moving forward with resolutions or legislation to undo Real ID. And the other thing is we're trying to get the attorneys general to act. And so that's a new initiative. We've sent out letters to absolutely all of them, all 50 plus 6 territories. And and then we're doing other action on that as well.
So how did CCHF, and I want to discuss the tie between Real ID, the biometrics involved with that, and the possibility it goes over into the health side.
Mhm.
CCHF being a health freedom organization, kind of that connection there. When I first heard this, I said, all right, health freedom, real ID. And it wasn't until I listened to some of your podcast and read but for our listeners that may not know how that connection was made, and where do you see this going if it's not stopped?
Yes, well, the connection is pretty simple once you understand or once you hear it, right? So we believe it'll be no card, no care. So unless you have the federal ID, the national ID, you won't be able to access care. And this is a very simple thing to understand when you realize that about 47% of all healthcare expenses are paid by the government. So when I said that Kristi Noem or whomever the Secretary of Homeland Security is at any point in time, that they can expand this to you have to have it in order to access medical care. This is why it would be very easy for them to do it, because they fund almost half of the healthcare in the nation. In addition to that, I really believe that that's what they would do to make everyone comply. So, not everybody has to fly, and you have a passport for flying, but do you have a passport into the doctor's office? You do not. So everybody needs a doctor. And so I think that this is a lever that they could decide to pull to try to get all of us to comply with the federal ID. But in addition to that, the HIPAA, the Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act, requires identifiers, 4 different identifiers, in order to build this healthcare tracking system and this national medical record system. And one of them is the unique patient identifier. And we believe that the Real ID will become that unique patient identifier, which we have stopped with the help of Ron Paul initially and Rand Paul, his son, Senator Rand Paul, over the last probably 7 years with him, annually trying to keep the funding of it out of the appropriations bill. And that has been successful so far. And then the other thing is just the biometrics. So people have to understand that the government has laid claims to your body coordinates. And so they have claimed the right to collect and to catalog the coordinates of your body parts for their control, starting with the face. But then the rule says that they can expand the biometric requirements at any time. So like Oklahoma has already added the thumbprint. And so it could be iris scans, it could be all sorts of, and eventually it could be your DNA that is sitting there in a digital format on your card. So, so that's it. They claim the right to your body and to use your body against you. And now that I mention this, I'm going to just tell all of your listeners, do not stand in front of that camera at the airport. The signs tell you you can opt out, and you should opt out. There's a bill in Congress, a bipartisan bill, to shut those things down. But in the meantime, you need to opt out. They are training, I believe they are training their machines to, even though your picture on your ID is one way, training the machines to be able to see you when you come with glasses and hats and in different lighting and different collars and all this kind of stuff. They need 50 points between ear to ear on your face to recognize who you are. And I believe they are training their machines with that. They're also training you to desensitize you to their collection and use of your body to control, for surveillance and control.
Yeah, even a small town like Bradford, Pennsylvania, which the city proper, we're under 7,000 residents right now. So we're really considered a small city. We do have surveillance cameras throughout the city, obviously for our protection and to watch for criminals and to be able to be used in criminal cases. But there again, if you're walking under one of those cameras, you are being picked up by this surveillance system, and it could be all part of that. Facial recognition. We don't. I guess that's the point. Is we don't know. It's become so ubiquitous to see cameras all over the place. that we don't understand that this data is going somewhere.
So
Go ahead, Fred.
This camera you're talking about at the airport, is this where you buy your ticket? They make you stand in front of a camera? I'm confused.
Yeah, this is at the security checkpoint, with the TSA agents. But
Gotcha.
There's also another one. If you're going overseas or you're flying, to an island or whatever, there's another one at the jet bridge. So, and both of them will say that you can opt out. The one that is at the security checkpoint, where you go in with your, the very first one, right? That one says you can opt out, and it's just a simple you can opt out. The one at the jet bridge says that your photo will be sent to Customs and Border Patrol, and then it will be reviewed, and then it will be deleted, blah, 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 blah. And then on the 6th paragraph at the bottom, or the very bottom paragraph, it says you can opt out if you want to. But you have to read the entire thing to see that you can opt out. So you have to understand Senator Merkley from Oregon, U.S. Senator Merkley from Oregon. He's so perturbed that he's been doing Instagram and Twitter posts and everything about what happens to him at the airport. And he is author of the bill in Congress. And then Markey is in there too. He's a Democrat. But then there's John Kennedy as a Republican, and others who are on this bill to get rid of that, and that is a good thing. And they think that it'll pass, one because it's bipartisan, and one because people are so perturbed at it. I think the other thing for you to know is the company behind it. So there's a big company behind it. It's an international company located in France, and it's called IDEMIA, and you can find it at idemia.com. And IDEMIA has a $46 million contract with TSA. And if you look at the machinery surrounding the TSA agent as you're going through security, you will see IDEMIA. If you have a TSA pre-check office that you go by, you will see IDEMIA. IDEMIA's plan is augmented authentication, which means that your body is your ID. You don't even have to carry a paper. They will know your face. They will know your gait, how you walk. They will have your eye scan as you're coming up to the camera. And so there's so many videos here that show you exactly what their plans are for you. They did all of the national IDs in India, 1 billion of them. And so their whole thing is, look at that, hyper-personalization, frictionless and secure border crossings, right? Because they're going to capture everything about you. And
that's crazy.
Yep. And so this is the government claiming your body for their control.
Yeah, that's crazy. I guess for the average person, we don't think about these things, and we depend on organizations such as yours that are doing all the heavy lifting to uncover this information, because this isn't part of our normal speak when we're getting together with our friends for coffee. This is not in our psyche every day, and it's until we bring this out and make people aware of it. Do you think there is what are the chances of the entire Real ID package going away? I'm not talking about just facial recognition. I'm not just talking about, photographs at the TSA station. I'm talking about doing away with that section of that bill, that law, which I agree is unconstitutional under the 10th Amendment. Do you think there's a shot of us getting rid of that?
I believe we're going to win. So we are dedicated on this, because we will not have America as we know it and love it under a Real ID system. And it is a system. It is not just a card. It is a system, a digital system. And just imagine, let's just say Gavin Newsom becomes president, and he wants to keep you in your 15-minute cities. And guess what? When you've got a digitized ID on your phone, he will know when you have left. And they will start charging carbon credits,
Yeah.
carbon
Oh,
taxes, right?
goodness.
Right. So just think of how this can be used. So, you watch those Chinese and how the Chinese government has this entire surveillance system all based on their phone. And the DMVs are planning to put this on our phones. So we are like in Minnesota, we stopped the digital ID bill that was just in this last legislative session. But conservative Idaho just did it because nobody's thinking about the fact that this is not about convenience. This is about control. This is about paying the government every time you use it. It's building the system, and a lot of people just aren't thinking about it. So we have to win. There's really no choice. We have to win, and I believe that we will.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm just looking through some of the comments here. Jim M, our previous co-host on this show, he's talking about AI, the executive orders with AI. Here's one about Larry Ellison with Oracle. As far as this is far like you said about that company in France that's really behind that. If entire companies exist, just for the surveillance industry, they're obviously going to be, trying to stop any movement to get rid of it. And I'll agree with Jim there about Mark of the Beast. Even go ahead.
What's really scary about this? What's really scary about this is almost all your stores now have cameras going. So if they can't get it through this way, they may backdoor it and go through grocery stores and make you do it, because whether you know it or not. I mean, just in particular, most grocery stores, when you walk in the door, they're videotaping you. When you go through this building, they're videotaping you. Matter of fact, when you're walking through Walmart, look up in the air. Sometimes you'll see cameras that saying you are being videotaped. They're everywhere, so they can sneak. This is crazy.
I think that a really important thing to understand is our country is different than any other country in the entire world.
Right.
And if we become like every other country in the entire world, there is no America. There's no America, land of the free, right? But there are all these people like WEF and the elites and everybody who want this globalist system. That's the other thing, is it will tie into a globalist ID. So it is really up to America and Americans to protect the world from this entire globalist agenda. And stopping Real ID is very, very key to that. And so even if we have all these cameras, the other thing that I would say is part of the reason that the United States is different is because, well, it was created differently, right? And it was created by Christians who had a different ethic. And as we have taken that ethic and that moral core out of the country, it becomes easier to impose state control because you have less self-control. So really, in some sense, you kind of need a revival in the country, to bring us back to the fact that people have to stop their bread and circuses. People have to actually realize what's happening here. And people have to start realizing that the core of the problem in this country is probably more moral and ethical than it is anything else. And it's allowing the government to do this because people want to be protected. Well, we didn't have to be protected before because we had a moral core and very few people violated it. And those that violated it, people, went after them and stopped them. Right. So, I think the issue is bigger. But in the meantime, we have to stop it based on the Constitution and based on our rights.
Well, let me ask you, because I know your time is limited with us today. How can people? I mean, we've kind of got the word out there. People are listening, and plus this is recorded, so a lot of our listeners watch this later. How can people make their voices heard? I mean, is it a matter of just, getting a hold of our congressmen or our senators in the state? And what's your recommendation? How can we fight? How can we, the people, fight back?
Yeah. So one, about that whole thing about we don't talk about this during coffee. Now's the time. When you're meeting with people, say, hey, can you just look at your ID? I'm trying to figure out how many of us have real IDs, the federal national ID surveillance system card, and how many of us have state. Just bring it up. Let people know what they don't understand. And then what so you have to engage the public, and they have to tell them that they can turn it back in, and they should if they want freedom in this country. And then at the state level, there needs to be calls and emails, particularly calls. Though calls are more effective than emails. Emails can be dismissed, calls less so. So
Right.
calling your state senator and your state representative and saying, hey, I just figured out that our state is complying with this national surveillance system and law called Real ID, and I want you to get us out of it. They need to hear it, right? Because everybody thinks this is a done deal, and it's not a done deal. And that's what they want us to believe, so that nobody will stand up. So they've got to be hearing it. And then I would also contact the governors and including in those states that are Republican, that don't even give you a choice, like DeSantis.
That amazes me.
Move. Well, I'm sure it happened. He may not even understand quite to the extent of the system that this is. It was before him, before he became governor.
Right.
So he may or may not understand it. He also may think it's a done deal, but it's not a done deal. And it's just a matter of pulling all the levers to build it. And the other thing is, please share this on social media. Share refuserealid.org on social media. Tell people what this is. Wow, there's a lot of Republicans saying Trump is doing it, so it's great. No, it's not. No. And so, tell people, do not say things like, there's a lot of MAGA people saying, well, it's been 20 years. Come on, people, get in line, get in order, go get your card. No, realize what it is. So tell those people, you don't understand what this is.
And that's just it. It's the ignorance. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I mean it in a definitive sense that ignorance is the lack of knowledge. Okay. And how Fred got knocked off this stage there. Anyways, I've had, and my wife and I talk about this, and she and I are on the same page on most every issue, but she has friends. I'm thinking of one particular they were talking about. She said, yeah, they just said, yeah, I'll just go ahead and get it. Maybe it can't hurt anything. In other words, people are so naive or so uninformed of what is really going on. And I pulled out my driver's license while you were talking here, and mine expires in 27. So I was thinking, if we don't stop this, when I go to renew this, I may not have an option.
Right.
In other words,
so renew it now.
If you want. Yeah. So, and it says right on here, this is Pennsylvania driver's license, not for real ID purposes. And I feel like saying, thank God. Yeah.
I got to renew next year, but I'm not getting the real ID. I told my kids not to, too.
Yeah. They have to understand, and the young people have to understand. They just think this is about convenience. Digital ID, great. That's just convenience. No, it's not. It's setting up the foundation for the social credit system that China has.
Yeah. Well, that is what is scary about all this, because one thing leads into another. And before you know it, we wake up some morning and we are no different than communist China or Russia or North Korea or any other country in the world where citizens have no rights whatsoever. It's just to me, it's a scary proposition.
Well, I think I will say that like I was on the Brett Weinstein on Dark Horse podcast, and that was one of the things that he said. He said, there's just like so many things in the world to deal with, and Real ID, I didn't necessarily think it was a good idea. I'm just paraphrasing him. But, I thought, I'm just going to get it right. And now he's like talking about it's going to lead to a totalitarian state. Right. And so he had me on his podcast to let people know. And I think that's the deal. There's so much deception coming out of the federal government. There's so many lies. Christine Noem saying, you won't be able to travel, you won't be able to fly, and all the time knowing there's 16 different identification cards, and there's a 2-year wait here. And by the end of that 2-year wait, they're going to have to extend it longer, because we're going to make sure that they'll still have disarray at the airport if they go in. So I would not give up on this. Instead, I would engage. engage. We need Americans to engage. And then tell us your stories. Tell us the stories, because we're collecting the stories of people in different states to figure out what is happening.
They're playing the long game too, because this is a smart way of doing it. Because they can really sneak this in on a lot. Because they say, "Oh, well, Trump's endorsing it. Let's just do it." Oh, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Well, is there? And I can put up a share your site as well. Let's see here.
Refuse real. Oh, you mean CCH Freedom?
Yeah, right here. I just want to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there a way for the public to interact with you and like you said, report or tell you all about it? I mean, is there? I didn't go through the entire site, so I didn't.
Yeah,
see
it's just contacting. The whole thing.
Under the contact us. Okay.
And tell us the story. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we
under the join CCHF. What does that involve, and what do we do? Obviously, it's a monthly newsletter here. I see.
Yeah,
I'm encouraging people to stay informed, with you, and I'm trying to figure out how to tell them to do that.
Yeah, I believe there is a in the about. I think there's a contact. If you click on about, which is up there at the top, about, and I go to the learn more.
CCF resources staff.
Where's the contact? There's a contact. There's a contact right there at the bottom. Contact us.
There you go. All right, and it even has your phone number there.
Yeah.
So, all right, perfect. All right. Well, it's important that we stay engaged, and you're right. Talking to people just in your circle of influence is one way to do it, and I do that on a number of issues, both local and national, because if we don't speak up, our rights they're slipping away anyway. In almost every I can't say this definitively, but so many things now that the government is doing, the federal government is doing, is in direct violation of the Constitution.
Right.
And you can see people. There's a national scorecard, JBS, John Birch Society puts it out to tell you how your representatives and senators vote, as far as the Constitution goes. And it's amazing that everything, things like this, unconstitutional things like this, are happening right under our nose, and we don't say anything about it. We don't fight back, and we have to fight back. Fred, did you want to say something there?
No, I was reading what Jim said to me. That's all.
So if you go to refuserealid.org, there's something I can have you show people.
Okay.
And I do think it's important to go to the Dark Horse podcast and share it. Now we are sharing clips on our Facebook page. We're sharing clips on our Instagram, TikTok, and what's the other one? Oh yeah, X, right? So it can be as easy as sharing those clips, but you can also go to Refuse Real ID and share that. But if you look down at Refuse Real ID, you go down just a little bit, you'll see these go down so those are quotes. Keep going. And you'll run into the documents. Here we go. So, lose a real ID and how to do it. 7 reasons for the legislature to act. Yes, you can fly without a real ID, which has quotes right out of the regulation, which show how worried they are about the airport. Now just go up a little. Go down. Go down.
I see those are PDFs that you can open up and download. And
that's correct. So here we have the Real ID history, how it started in 2004. Here's our redlined response to the TSA. So we sent a letter to President Trump asking him to act, and somebody in the White House sent it to the TSA. So then we redlined the TSA response to us. Interesting. They didn't even have a date at the top of the letter. At the very bottom of the letter, they said, this guy said, thank you for contacting me. And we corrected it to say, thank you for contacting President Trump. So we made all these corrections. And then there's just a practical guide there of refusing Real ID, and then 10 reasons to refuse Real ID. If you're wondering what I said, that's all here on the 10 reasons. And so these are the kind of documents that you can share. And if you go down further, you can see taking action. And then if you go down further than that, you'll find a Real ID billboard. And we're going to start doing Real ID ads. But here, we were on Big Tree, Highwire, we're on these are things that people can add and share with their neighbors from people who maybe, those people listen to. Alex Jones.
Yeah. You can share all of this on social media. Just open it up and share it to your Facebook or Instagram or whatever you happen to be on.
Right.
Amazing.
So we are bound and determined to stop the Real ID system. It's really important for people to understand it is a national surveillance and control system. The card is going to be digitized. And so we have to stop the system and not be part of the system.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As a matter of fact, if we were still we used to do this podcast at a local restaurant, and you could see my shirts a lot better, but I become a walking billboard for these podcasts, and actually when I'm wearing it out in the public too, and right down the side of my shirt it says I will not comply. And that seems to be the theme of my life lately anyway. So again, I want to be very, very conscious, because in our initial conversation, they told us we had 45 minutes with you. And even with that little bit of a delay getting you on, we're just about up to that 45 minutes. So I just want to give you one last chance. Any last things that you want to tell our audience before we close?
Oh, I think what I will say is, people say about privacy, I've already given it up. Doesn't really matter. You have to understand this is all about control. It's not about your privacy and the information that you gave up to get the Real ID, because that is minimal compared to what they're planning to do in the future, and use all the data that will be collected and observed with a digital version of this in order to control you. So the thing to do right now is do not give up. And what we say about privacy is, one, he who holds the data makes the rules. And the other thing is that privacy is the foundation of freedom. And every tyrant knows that. And so we must stop the tyrants, whether they're unwitting tyrants or perfectly engaged totalitarian tyrants. But we must stop those tyrants and do everything possible, because if we do not have privacy, we will have surveillance and they will have control. And so it's really up to us, the people, and we're so powerful in this battle, because we can just start switching back, and we can start complaining if they don't let us switch back. And there are state legislators who are already concerned now, and the TSA cameras are concerning people. And so now is the time for the public to engage. Do not sit back and believe, oh, it's a lost battle. Oh, it is definitely not. But they want you to think it. And if you're concerned about privacy, also know this. I wrote a book called Big Brother in the Exam Room, The Dangerous Truth About Electronic Health Records. And just because the Real ID issue is so important, I put a little segment of it in there. But really, I just talk about how the collection and use of exam room or your health data is also putting the doctors under government control. So I encourage people to read that if they're wondering about medical privacy. But in the meantime, act on Real ID. Go to refuserealid.org. Tell your friends and tell your legislators, and tell any podcaster that send in comments saying, you should hear from CCHF. They got a whole different take on Real ID.
Absolutely.
Make some noise. We just really need people to make some noise.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, there's 300 million of us in this country,
Yeah.
We far outnumber the tyrants that are trying to subdue us. So
Right.
it's just a matter of getting people mobilized.
Right.
But you notice they only listen to the small percentage. I mean, there's a small percentage that are creating a lot of the problems, but they're the only ones making the news.
Mhm.
Well, we got to make the noise. We got to make louder noise. But Twyla, one thing we always do, we always end our podcasts with prayer, and Fred is normally the one that handles this, and I would like to ask him and have you be here as we do the prayer, because we'd like to hold you up in prayer, hold up your organization, CCHF, and what you're doing, and just for ask for divine intervention and guidance and help in doing what you're doing. Fred, why don't you close us out in prayer here, my friend?
Okay. So every time we do these podcasts, we bring on a guest, I learned something I didn't know. But I'm going to pray right now, Lord, that you would put a hedge of protection around this organization and their leaders, Lord, that the enemy would not try to take them out, because we know that the enemy is always trying to find a way to take over. Lord, I ask you would bless them and give them wisdom from you that you can only provide, Lord, and that they would not be distracted by the tactics of the enemy, but they would stay strong, and that all of us would keep our eyes open and be wise to the tricks of the enemy. Lord, I ask you to bless this day and bless everybody who's hearing this, and not to take this lightly. In Jesus' name, amen.
Yeah. Amen. God bless you. All right, Twyla, thank you very much for joining us again. This has been enlightening to me, and I hope it is to our listeners. And we are going to stay in touch with your organization and follow what's going on. So don't be surprised if you hear from us again. So,
okay.
All righty. Thank you.
So much.
Yeah. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Yep. Okay, Fred, that was enlightening, to say the least. I mean, I was going to refuse Real ID all along, because I just don't like, I didn't think of it in the surveillance aspect as deeply as what they're talking about there, but I just didn't like the idea that I needed some kind of federal card to tell me that I could travel, or in this case, fly, which I don't do anymore. I literally have not flown, oh my gosh, since I can't even remember what year it was, but it's been like 15 years since I've flown. So
Tanya's been on to this Real ID thing for a while now. She's been telling people about it. So Moms for Liberty have been up on for Moms for Liberty for Real ID for a while.
Okay. Well, I'm disappointed that in one sense that Republican states are going along with this and mandating it. On the other hand, I can see how departments like DMV are circumventing. In other words, they're doing things, and the legislatures don't know what they're doing, or things are put into certain bills and passed without
reading it.
Bill, or without reading it, or they're compromising. But I'll tell you what, I have got into a habit. She makes a good point. I take the easy way. I hate to say this, but I take the easy way. I do emails, because quite frankly, when you call their offices, you're only going to get their staff anyway. You're never going to be able to talk to your senator or your congressman. But I think it's a both and, do the email and make the phone call. And I say this a lot, because it's like that old Native American adage about a single bee, if you have a single bee, it's going to be annoying, and it's, and you can ignore it. But if you get 1,000,000 bees, or you get 1,000 bees, or 100,000 bees, they're going to make a difference. Well, if we get a million people to call, they're gonna stand up and listen. In Pennsylvania, I don't know how many the population is in GT's district, but call his office. We've done that even on the podcast before. Jim's called it while we were on the air. But you got to make noise. You have to stand up. If we don't stand up, if we don't make the noise, if we don't fight back, they're gonna just steamroll us, and one of these days we're gonna wake up and we're not gonna have any freedom left, and we're gonna say to ourselves, "What the hell happened?"
Yeah.
Well, what the hell happened? The last 10 years, you've been like an ostrich with your head in the ground.
I shared her page on my Facebook so that people can find it and her information, so that we, and I put on the caption on there, "You can fly without real ID," because she had a valid point.
Yeah. I'm going to urge everybody to go to those sites that refuse real ID, which is just part of the CCHF website. It's just their landing page. But go to those and download that information. Organizations like this and like John Birch Society, they put a plethora of information out there, just tons of it. And it's at our disposal. We can download a PDF. We can save it. We can share it on Facebook. We can share it on any other social media platform.
Right.
And it's just an idea that, you're going to you're going to be on social media anyway, looking at funny puppy pictures. I mean, I admit I do that too. Dogs are my thing. But take the time to make an impact. Take the time to do something. Talk to your neighbors. I don't know. I'm this whole thing, like my shirt says, I will not comply. Well, it's not enough to just say not comply. You got to be active. You got to be proactive. You got to be in their faces. Think about this. Take a lesson from the leftist playbook. These lunatics that are destroying our cities, or these leftists that are approaching people like Charlie Kirk when he's out there doing rallies, they're in their face. They're always screaming their point of view out there, and we're just silent. We're the silent majority. Well, it's time that we're not silent anymore.
True.
We cannot be silent. If you value the freedom you have with this country, the supposed freedom, they're trying to take it away, but if you value the American way, if you wanted to get back to a constitutional republic that it was designed to be by our founding fathers, then you, every one of you and me, we have to be we have to take an active role in it. We can't depend on a savior. We can't depend on MAGA or Donald Trump or Senator McCormick or G.T. Thompson or anybody else. We have to do it. It's we the people.
And even if you just take the time to tell one or two people, those one or two people are going to tell one or two people, and it's going to progress.
Yeah. There's a saying, among other, I can't remember where this is from, is tell three to tell three. Tell three of your friends about this and ask them to tell three of their friends. Pretty soon you've got 1 million people. Oh, yes, Jim, you're right. God is the spiritual answer, the political answer, but we still, and I'll say this too, you work within the system. You work to make change, and you just, I believe in the power of prayer. I really do. But you can go into your room and get on your knees and pray. But it's just like this professor at our son Aaron's graduation down in Westminster College. The one thing I'll remember for the rest of my life, he says, when you get out there, you got to push and pray. It's not enough to pray. You got to push. You got to get active. You got to do something. You got to get off your ass and do something. So yes, pray. Yes, go to God. It is a spiritual battle.
Absolutely.
But God uses the people on this planet to do his work. Yep. I know he's in the miracle business, but he's also in the people business. He wants us to be his arms and legs and mouth.
And you got to You got to put feet to your faith. You can't just sit there and pray and do nothing and walk out and talk to no one. Don't get your face out there. If you're going to sit back and hide and just pray in your corner, but you're not willing to walk out there and tell somebody to their face, what good is it?
Yeah. Mike or Mick makes a good point here.
Faith, that's it.
Faith without works is dead. I mean, you have faith. You got to depend on your faith, but you also have to be engaged. You have to do something. You have to be involved, because like I say, one of these days you're going to wake up and it's all going to be gone. You're going to say, what happened? And by that time it's too late. Now is the time to do it. Now, I mean, it's been going on for years anyway. I mean, I just got involved. I got more active when Obama came on the scene. And so that's just the last since 2008. But think about, it's been going on since the turn of the 20th century, back in the early 1900s under Woodrow Wilson. And the more you learn about history, the more you understand what's going on. And that's why our schools are changing the history and the curriculum. And that's all part of the Marxist plan. And it's just the way it is. Fred, I could rant and rave forever, but we're already over our 10 o'clock. Is there any final closing words of wisdom that you want to share?
I don't know. I was just reading the last comment, but anyway, to me, it's not about not doing anything. It's about not being afraid to speak out. There's a lot of times we get involved with situations and we don't say anything, and it takes a while for us to push the button to go, wait a minute, I can't be a part of this. Like, you get a part of an organization and you can see that they're supporting something you don't believe in, but it takes you months to change your mind to do something about it. We got to be bold enough to do something as soon as we see it. That's the reason why I'm pointing out this thing about Trump, right? I mean, with this Real ID, we need to say something now. Who cares if Trump is the one that's pushing it? It's our freedom, not his.
Right. I'm going to put this up here. Jim M. I'm assuming interpret the praying as not doing anything. Yes, I think praying is, if that's what you're talking about, Jim, I think praying is doing something. But again, we are to be Christ's hands and feet and mouth on this planet. And I do believe if you have the ability to do it, you should do it. If you have the ability to talk to somebody, you should talk to them. You can talk about faith as well, obviously. Absolutely. But it's important to talk about these things that are happening, because they're just, again, people don't understand what is going on, and they won't understand until we wake them up. So it's prayer, and it's Jim, you keep throwing comments in here at me. It's prayer and it's action.
Right.
Okay. All right. Okay, Jim. We could keep this conversation going on forever, but let's close it out here. You've already prayed us out, Fred.
Yeah.
For all of you that joined us, I hope you enjoyed this with Twyla. I encourage you to go to their site, the CCHF.org, I think, the Citizens Council for Health Freedom, and get engaged. Next week, we will be talking about a lot of news that's been going on. I don't think we have a guest coming up, but Steve Stern wanted to come back on again, but I think he's on vacation for a couple weeks. So we'll probably have her or him on here in the near future. But for now, wherever you are, whether you're in Pennsylvania or out in Washington State or anywhere in between, have a wonderful day. I hope it's nice weather where you're at, and just enjoy yourself and be blessed.
And be a blessing to others.
So we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Okay.